de monitorizar y gestionar flotas de vehículos en el sector empresarial. Tenemos con nosotros, nos acompaña John Saffrett, que es el Deputy Chief Executive Officer de ALD Automotive, y nos va a contar cuáles son los planes de ALD para seguir contribuyendo a este ecosistema de la movilidad urbana sostenible. Con todos ustedes, John Saffrett. Un fuerte aplauso. Va a hacer su presentación en inglés. Tenéis disponibles fuera los dispositivos de traducción simultánea para aquellos que queráis seguirlo en castellano.
Play. Good afternoon. Firstly, please let me apologize for coming all the way to Mexico City and speaking in English. It's a very typical English thing to do, so I apologize for this, and I'll make more of an effort next time I come and visit you in Latin America. Secondly, I'd like to thank you for the honor of being here with you in this wonderful, vibrant part of the world, and at this wonderful event, to just share with you some of the global trends that ALD Automotive are seeing in mobility and talk about how I think these apply in Latin America as well. Firstly, for those that don't know who ALD are, we have a fleet of 1.7 million vehicles around the world, and we have a coverage in 55 countries. And those vehicles are with large corporates and large international corporates, but increasingly we supply vehicles on a full service lease to private individuals and to small, medium enterprises as well. And that now makes up around 600,000 to 700,000 vehicles of our running fleet in the world today. This is our country coverage. We have wonderful partners around the world. I'm happy to announce in LATAM we have our partners ALD and AutoCore. And our ambition is to remain a leading player in the mobility evolution and revolution in Latin America and work with those partners to create this new world of mobility that we keep hearing about. Now, one of the challenges when you talk about mobility is no one can actually tell you what it is. So everyone has a different definition of mobility. Everyone tells you it's scooters, it's car sharing, it's ride hailing, it's carpooling. And at ALD we had this challenge as one of the major players in the leasing sector to try to work out what we were going to be in the mobility space and understand our role and the position we could take. And when you look at the sector, you'll all have seen slides like this before. It talks about the main trends that are affecting the world today: digital lifestyle, 24/7, environmental challenges, urban explosions, and everything else. And we translate this into affecting the mobility sector and our business in 5 key areas. Basically, this continuing shift from ownership to usage leads to the explosion of a leasing type offer, where people want to take a car with a range of services, and they either own the car, they use the car, they use someone else's car, but ultimately someone has to look after that car for them. We have the emergence of alternative powertrains. I was listening to some of the sessions this morning talking about electric vehicles and the barriers in LATAM to electric vehicle expansion. You're no different to anywhere else in the world. Nowhere else in the world is there enough charging infrastructure to support this. Nowhere else in the world is there enough electric vehicles available to satisfy demand. But I believe that you have a dynamic and a culture in Latin America, which means you'll probably overcome those challenges much more successfully than we will in continental Europe. And I believe that part of your culture and the way you operate and the creativeness that you have in this region will help you find more creative challenges or ways of overcoming those challenges. We also see the rise of connected cars. So all of a sudden the car's connected, cars are generating data. Data's lovely, but data's useless if you can't do something useful with it. And therefore we hear about a lot of companies trying to create value from data and trying to make it useful to their clients and make it worthwhile. We hear about mobility services and mobility platforms. We had Waze on earlier. We deal with BP. You hear about Citymapper, Uber, who exist in some countries now. So this emergence of mobility platforms, and everyone's trying to work out in a city, is it going to be one mobility platform providing everything? Is it going to be lots of mobility platforms providing single services? How are the public transport operators going to adapt? How are the governments going to regulate it? I spoke to the mayor of Helsinki last year, and Helsinki's this model of mobility platforms in Europe. And I said, are you going to regulate the number of mobility operators in the city? And she said, John, we don't regulate the number of hairdressers in the city, so we don't see why we should regulate the number of mobility operators. Actually, we want an open market where everyone has access to the market, and then the best players will win, and the worst players will leave the city and go elsewhere. And then the last trend we're seeing in the industry is this mythical world of autonomous vehicles, which will clearly represent a paradigm shift in our world, not just in the leasing world, but in the way that cities operate. But autonomous is a little bit further down the line, and in terms of what I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to move autonomous further down and talk about how ALD see the next 3 to 5 years. So when we look at these trends that I mentioned before, it's very difficult to identify what the products or services are going to be in the future that people are going to want. And therefore, ALD, our approach is not to try to work out the products and services that we're going to deliver to our clients, but develop some capabilities that we believe you need in order to win. And what I mean by this as an example is that in future, the mobility world will be fleet-based. Even if you're using shared cars and autonomous cars, they will be run by fleet operators, providing financing across hundreds of vehicles, providing all the services around those vehicles, and also having the ability to sell those vehicles at the end of the contract. And actually, most leasing companies in the world today, and most of the major leasing companies in this region, can already do that today. So it means that we think, as a leasing company, we've got a role to play in the future. But what we also recognize is that those capabilities don't work in the new world. And in the new world, you need some new muscle, and I like to refer to it as muscle. And the 5 muscles that we've been concentrating on building at ALD are in the wheel. So we said to ourselves, if we're going to compete with all the digital players, we need to be world-class at digital. We need to be able to create as good a digital experience as anyone else in the world. Because otherwise the users that have got their apps on their mobile phone are going to go somewhere else for the service. And once they've gone somewhere else, you can't get them back. We recognize that we need to develop an e-mobility offer, because an electric vehicle is different. The experience of an electric vehicle is different to a petrol and diesel vehicle. And therefore we developed a specific EV product. We have a product in our EV range called Switch. And Switch is a product that allows you to take an electric vehicle, but in the lease we build in 20 or 30 days of diesel or petrol. Because we worked out that most people, when they're concerned about range anxiety, there's probably 5 journeys a year that the range anxiety is relevant. And therefore what we do is we say to you, take an EV, it's the right thing to do, it works for you, but then 48 hours before you want to do that journey, call us, we'll deliver a traditional vehicle to you, use the vehicle for the journey. At the end of the journey, leave it in your house, we'll come and collect it, and you carry on using your electric vehicle. And it's simply trying to overcome these barriers to enable this transition to the new mobility world. And when you're a traditional leasing company with millions of diesel and petrol vehicles, It's very hard to be visionary in this space because you get parked over in the old-fashioned corner, and all of the digital sexy mobility companies are over here being cool and doing cool stuff. And what we've tried to recognize is say we might be a bit old-fashioned and have an old-fashioned business model, but we think we know where the business is going, and we think we have the scale and the muscles in order to compete in that new mobility world. Now, the way we've approached this is we've become a tech company. And tech companies talk about platforms. And platforms are multimodal, multi-modular technology services that you can stitch together a bit like Lego and create new models and new business models and new offers for your clients. And we've invested heavily over the last 4 years in these digital platforms. So the first platform is a retail used car platform that allows us to sell our cars online to a retail client in a number of European countries. The slide doesn't reflect the latest status. The second is having a connected car platform where we can take data from any car in the world or from a device in that car, because a lot of the OEMs are still struggling to package their connected car data, and we can then do something useful with it and create offers for clients around insurance and around proactive maintenance and around driver safety and driver behavior. The third is around mastering the digital experience. And at ALD, we now have a digital platform in 10 countries that a private individual can choose a car, apply for credit, sign the document, and have the car delivered within 14 days. And we recently partnered with Amazon in Spain to launch Amazon Motors. It's the first time Amazon have ever let an Amazon client go outside the Amazon ecosystem. But if you go onto Amazon Motors in Spain, you see a list of offers from ALD Automotive, and it enables a client within 10 minutes to sign the document and arrange for the car to be delivered to their home. And by the way, they get a 30-day return guarantee, just like they do with anything else they buy on Amazon, which allows them to return the car to us if they're not satisfied. And this digital platform, the latest incarnation, is where we're partnering Polestar across Europe and Tesla across Europe in selling leasing products on their website in a full digital experience for their clients. Now, this is how we see the product piece evolving over the future. So I mentioned before, we don't know what products are going to be relevant, but what we've planned out is once we've built these digital platforms, how creative can we be? And what new products and services can we play? And what can we work with? And what you see here is the traditional, historic leasing company OEM business, selling cars, financing cars. Nice typical stuff, but essential in the new world. You can't do the new world without this. In the middle you see what's happening now, our mobility as a service platform, our car sharing platform, our digital platforms. And what you see over at the far end is where we see the future going, which by using our car sharing platform, for example, we can support an urban car sharing platform, we can support a carpooling offer. At the moment our car sharing platform is focused on corporate clients. So in Italy we have a car sharing fleet of 3,000 cars being shared across a number of corporates, and that increases the utilization of those vehicles, and increasingly that's becoming an electric vehicle based offer. And then we've got this holy grail of subscription where everyone wants to get to, the ability to change your car anytime, use this car, use a different car, hand it back when you don't want it, take a new one whenever you like, and that's where we'll all end up. But right now the economics don't work. The economics on that model don't work, the economics on free floating car sharing don't work, and therefore we have to look at the transition period in terms of how we get there before the economics of those models begin to happen well. Now if I give you an idea of some of our products, the first is this, trying to help our clients make the transition to electric vehicles and drive the adoption of electric vehicles, and therefore we had to rebuild our product. We had to rebuild our traditional leasing product. We had to look at our pricing structure on the residual values of those vehicles and make them more attractive. We had to offer consultancy to our clients where we could look at the 5,000 drivers they have and recommend the drivers that are ready for the change based on their journey history, and keep advising the other drivers to stick with traditional fuels until they're ready. We developed our ALD sharing platform, and the ALD car sharing platform is aimed at corporates. And this allows corporates to share their company cars amongst the employees that need them for work purposes, but we also then enable those cars for the rest of the employees to use them in the evening at weekends. And they pay a nominal rate for using those cars, but we share that profit with the corporate. So the corporates actually lower their whole cost of ownership of those vehicles because we're enabling the efficient use of those vehicles and facilitating new channels that use those vehicles all the time. The next product is Flex. My favorite product we have in the world is called Ricaricar in Italy. If there's any Italians in the room, Ricaricar literally means the rechargeable car. It works like a mobile phone. You take a car from us, and then every month you decide how many kilometers you're going to drive, and you buy a charge card to cover those kilometers. And at the end of the month, we see how many kilometers you've driven versus how many you've bought, and we do a true up and a balance. And then on the first of the month, you start again. So we've taken the mobile phone model and what we've seen in telco and basically applied it to car usership. And it's one of the first products where we're moving away into the real realm of freedom of usage and paying for your usage. And ALD Move is our latest product we've offered. So this is a mobility as service app. And this is offered to employees of corporate clients. And what ALD Move does is it allows us to plug into your work calendar and your appointment calendar. And it allows us to provide you with a real-time mobility plan based on your calendar, based on your location, but also based on the policy that your corporate has in terms of moving towards a more greener mobility. So for example, if your corporate has an objective to reduce company car usage by 40%, it means 2 days out of the week we don't recommend the company car in your journey plan. And we direct you into public transport, and we direct you into Uber or any other taxi hailing company that you may have an account with, or ideally put you onto your feet and walk, or take an e-bike. And we use the Microsoft Smart Cities platform and the Google platform to allow us to get real-time information so that we can update the mobility plan every 15 minutes, depending on your location, and depending on your calendar and whether it's changed. And we're seeing this app increasingly being used to change the behavior of employees and drivers and support the transition towards new mobility. So this is our mobility offer for the future. All of those products we've talked about are what we're trying to build together, and we're rolling that mobility offer out across all of our different countries. Now, just very briefly on LATAM, because I am out of time and the guys are flashing a red flag at me, so I apologize. In terms of LATAM, why do I think you're ready for mobility? I think you're ready because all the dynamics that are the perfect storm for mobility to take off exist here. You've got all the challenges of congestion and the excessive growth of cities. You've got the chaotic expansion of your main urban cities. You've got this chaos going on between public policy and private players trying to master the challenge of the city. And that creates innovation, and it creates creativity and new products and new services. And my advice would be just let it flourish and let it happen. The EV revolution is going to happen here. The mobility revolution is going to happen here. So don't fight it. Don't come up with all the reasons why it can't happen. Just embrace the fact it's going to happen. Find a role or find a position in that revolution and play a part in doing it. And by the way, no one can do it on their own. The mobility and the emergence of mobility is not a one company play. And our role and our belief in ALD about the role we want to play is about aggregating these mobility providers and enabling this transition to a new mobility world in all of the major cities and countries throughout the world. And we're incredibly excited by the opportunity that exists in Latin America. And the team are all here today and tomorrow, and they'll be happy to talk to partners and any customers or any other players or startups in the room that want to come and play a part in this mobility revolution that we see happening. So thank you for your time. Good luck with the challenge and the revolution, and ALD will be here to help you as you go on that adventure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jon. I don't know. Thanks.